Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is an author, artist, actor, and filmmaker. As an author, he has written the books Fighter Played Basketball, Wrestling with Sanity, A Distance from Avalon, and Art and War of directing student low and no budget movies. His name is Mike Messier, and my interview with Mike will follow the note-taking sounds. Mike Messier, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Great to be here, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Messier. I have a website, which is mikemessier.com. That's MIKEMESSIER.com. I do a lot of different things. I've been involved in acting, screenwriting. These days, I'm here to talk mostly about my book, Fight or Play Basketball. Every Shot Counts. It's a young adult coming-of-age sports novel with a love triangle on top of that, and it's available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, audiobooks, all types of distribution you can find it on.
You've written, I think it's like 4 or 5 books, but they include Fight or Play Basketball, Wrestling with Sanity, A Distance from Avalon, and Art and War of directing student low and no budget movies. Without spoiling too much of your books, what are each of them about?
Wrestling with Sanity is a graphic novel. It's very short. People can get it on Kindle through Amazon. So that's only 16 pages. So I think that's really just something if people wanted to read something in 10 minutes or less. Wrestling with Sanity, the graphic novel, which I'm pretty proud of. I had a really great illustrator do that for me. I wrote it, and then my friend Mark McCrenna drew the illustrations. That's in to promote a screenplay that I wrote called Wrestling with Sanity. A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite, is a novel that I wrote, which is a gothic horror / magical realism Halloween night story. There's 2 school teachers, Joe and Shadow. They go on a first date on Halloween night, and they find themselves at a castle run by a man named Jean Lacroix Distance and his young mistress Heartbreak. Through a turn of events, we find out that these 2 hosts are something in the vein of vampires, and chaos and madness ensue. So that's A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite. My film book that you mentioned is basically, I was an acting coach for 10 years, and I've won 84 awards in the entertainment world for various short films, for writing, directing, and so forth. And over the years, Aaron, I compiled a lot of lessons that I used to teach in my acting classes and some speaking events. So I put them together in the film book. So if anyone wants to pick my brain, about filmmaking or acting, I kind of put everything that I had to offer in that book, which is also available on Amazon. And then I think the last one, we're talking about Fight or Play Basketball, which is the young adult sports novel that's available on Audible. I just recorded it in September and October of 2024. Recorded Fight or Play Basketball onto audiobook. And for that process, Aaron, I brought in a friend of mine, an actress named Mary Beth Paul, and she read the narrations for the female characters, which I thought was an important thing to do as well. So there you go.
The audiobook version of Fight or Play Basketball was recently produced. I think it might have been produced just a few months ago. What was it like to have the audiobook version of Fight or Play Basketball produced?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was really a process because the audiobook version came, 2 years after I had the print version out. And I just had kind of I guess the first aspect of that is why do it? And the reality is, Aaron, when I read books these days, 90% of the time I'm listening to a book, usually in my car because I drive a whole lot. So, I mean, I'm always listening to audiobooks these days, more so than music or podcasts even. So when I kind of looked at my own journey here with Fight or Play Basketball, and maybe I wasn't selling as many hard copies as I wanted to, I said, well, if I was the customer, I would prefer this on audiobook. And then the next stage of that is when I'm an audiobook listener, I always prefer when the actual author reads their own book, like when the author is the narrator, you know what I mean? And I find it a little bit distancing, so to speak, when a different artist, a different speaker is the narrator to someone else's book. I typically don't like that as much. So I really wanted to record my own audiobook. And there was many YouTube videos about how to do this at home and how to set up your own studio and so forth. But the reality is, buddy, I knew that I would get a better result if I traveled from Florida, where I live now, back to Rhode Island, where the book takes place. And I worked with my buddy Tim Labonte, who's my usual go-to filmmaking friend. And so I enlisted him to become a studio engineer. And it took us a total of 9 recording day sessions. You know, the sessions would range anywhere from 8 hours to 12 hours a day to get this audiobook down. And it was a real trial by fire experience, you know, because I didn't realize, I always thought I was a good speaker, but apparently I breathed too much, Aaron, because when you're recording an audiobook, you really want to be conscious of your breathing. So Tim was really on me about that. So we had the best possible experience for the listener. And then, of course, after we did this for 9 days, we discovered that with a couple of pushes of the button, a lot of my heavy breaths could be eliminated anyway in post-production. So it turned out for the best. I'm very proud of the audiobook quality. The people that have listened to it have said that it sounds very professional, and that feels good.
What motivated you to write Fight or Play Basketball?
This is going back to 2010. I was in a screenwriting group in Rhode Island when I lived there. There was about 5 of us that would come together about every 2 weeks or so to compare our screenwriting drafts and scripts and so forth. And we really held each other accountable to a pretty high standard. One of the members of our group was a guy named Carl Dupre, who wrote the script for Detroit Rock City, the Kiss movie from about 20 years ago. Carl also wrote a couple of the Hellraiser sequels. So basically in this group, that was very informal, but we were, I wouldn't say we were competitive, but we did, you know, keep each other on task. I started to write what I was conceiving to be a sequel to the Rocky movies. And this is before any of the Apollo movies came out. And I started writing about 10 pages of this, you know, what I was calling Rocky 7. And then I called Sylvester Stallone's management company, and I just was very, you know, and they actually returned the phone call, which was kind of nice. And I asked them, you know, if I write this sequel to the Rocky movies, would Sylvester Stallone actually read it? And the manager that I spoke to said, well, do you have any budget for this? And I said, no. And he said, well, then unfortunately, he probably wouldn't read it. So I was very, believe it or not, that sounds like a no, or it sounds very dismissive just saying that, but I was actually happy they just returned the phone call and gave me some honest answers, because in the entertainment world, it's hard to get an honest answer sometimes. So I was happy with the 10 pages that I wrote, and with some quick changes. Basically, I changed the Rocky character to Sweet Sugar Brown. And I was so early in the process of writing this script that it was such a nucleus of an idea. You know, basically 2 boxers, a trainer, and a person trying to get U.S. citizenship through boxing. That was the basic initial premise. And then the other characters, Jack Scratch, the young basketball player, and his mom, Janet, they come into it next. And then throughout this process of writing the screenplay, and the screenplay has won some nice awards on its own as a screenplay. But coming into the process of writing this thing, I mean, you can see that over 15 years, you know, the screenplay version, the novel version, before the novel was even released, I actually used Kindle Vella, which is no longer even around. But some of your listeners might remember for about 5 or 6 years, there was this thing called Kindle Vella, which was on Amazon for 5 or 6 years. It didn't really take off, but that was a platform to write a story in basically segmented forms. And that's how I initially wrote the novel version of Fight or Play Basketball in Kindle Vella, adapting it from a screenplay. So it has been a process, Aaron. It hasn't been an overnight thing with this story.
I'm going to talk briefly about A Distance from Avalon. What motivated you to write that book?
Well, that's a good story too. You know, I had actually it goes way back, but I mean, I'll give you the behind the scenes. There was a short window of my life where it's a sad story, but through a friend at a traditional church, I was actually exposed to very briefly a cult, a real life cult. You know, like you see these Midsommar, which is a really great movie, and the stuff about Nexus and the stuff about Scientology. Like I can attest that that stuff is legitimate because I was exposed to something on a much softer scale, but a cult nonetheless. So that was going back to 2013. And then a few weeks later, I started writing a script once again for that screenwriting group called Disregard, which eventually became Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary, which people can see on YouTube. So basically, I wrote this story called Disregard. It was filmed as a movie. The movie's lead actor dropped out. I made a documentary about that experience. And then during that experience of making the documentary, I changed Disregard the Vampire into A Distance from Avalon. So basically, I reimagined or I reconfigured my own creative world. And the new title is A Distance from Avalon. Some of the characters have been changed quite a bit. And once again, I had a screenplay first, and I think it was 2018 that I started translating it into a novel form and also a play form. So I have written this as a stage play as well. And I looked into the world of publishing for A Distance from Avalon around 2018, 2019. And all I really found, Aaron, was, you know, these companies that are kind of vanity publishing or novelty publishing. These things I really didn't trust very much. I mean, they're basically like glorified Kinkos, you know what I mean? And what I discovered eventually during the pandemic was that Amazon could pretty much do the same thing for me with the self-publishing, and the price was so much better because with Amazon self-publishing, you're not paying upfront to get your book published. You're putting the work in, which I'm happy to do. So that's kind of a long roundabout answer to your question, but I hope that helps a bit.
What are the easiest and hardest aspects of writing books for you?
That's another great question, buddy. Easiest and hardest. I mean, I think that here you go. Let's start with the hardest. The hardest, I think, and other writers would probably attest to this, is that you write it and then you look at draft after draft after draft, and you find yourself making changes and tweaks, and you know sometimes it's a ripple effect. If you change one sentence or one paragraph in chapter 3, that affects something in chapter 17. So then you have to go to chapter 17, which might affect chapter 21. You know what I mean? So there's these different things where, as a writer, sometimes it's really hard to let go, which for me at least, another reason why the self-publishing route is kind of nice, because I can tweak the book at any time that I want without going through an editor or publisher with traditional publishing. So I think that you said I would say that was the hardest thing, is just knowing when to stop. You know what I mean? Like knowing when it's done. I think the easiest thing for me, I actually enjoy writing. I actually like the flow of things. I do kind of like that process of tweaking and rewriting. And I know that a lot of writers don't like that. They just like to write the initial first draft. But I kind of like, once I have that initial draft done, I like going through and changing things and tweaking things. So maybe for me, kind of the best part and the worst part of the same thing, which is the rewriting.
Now, are all your books independently published, or did you have some that were hybrid or traditionally published?
They're all independently published, Aaron, you know, and that was actually, I mean, I have no qualms about, you know, meeting with some big publishing group, whether it's, you know, whoever, Reagan Books or Simon and Schuster. Of course, I'd be open to that type of arrangement. I think for me, buddy, in the 2021, you know, 2022, when I was doing this stuff with Amazon, first getting these books out there, what attracted me to that was basically my experience with filmmaking, where with filmmaking you're always sending your short film to a festival, or for me it's always sending a proof of concept video to some producer, or always putting my stuff online for the general public to weigh in on. And I got to the point of frustration where, you know, I feel like I've written many great screenplays and not all of them have been made. So I just got sick of looking for other people's money or other people's approval or other people's pat on the back or other people greenlighting my project. I just didn't want to put myself through that as an artist or as a writer, to have to rely on someone else's opinion in order to get my book out to the masses or whoever would read it. So that's why I didn't even write a bunch of cover letters looking for major companies to get behind me, because I didn't want to. I just didn't feel like going through that song and dance. And the other thing that I've heard, Aaron, and I guess it depends on who you ask or whose experience you're basing it on. A lot of times, writers who do have a major book company behind them aren't necessarily getting the sales. And if they are getting the sales, they're not necessarily getting the percentage of the money that they think they should get, because the big book company or the big book distributor basically says, hey, we put you on the map and we got you famous, but we're going to take most of your money. And I know I'm simplifying things a bit, and that's just, some experiences, but I guess I really just didn't want to go through the hassle of dealing with big book companies, at least not at that point.
You've been producing movies since you were in high school. What do you love most about filmmaking, and what are some films you produced, written, directed, or some combination of those?
I would say if people really want to get to know me, Mike Messier, and what I'm capable of, I would probably guide them to Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary. That's on Vimeo. You can watch that for free on Vimeo. You can watch that on YouTube for free under one Mike Messier. Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary. Some of my other short films, the most recent one, which is excellent, is Many Keys, the Heartbreak Monologue. That's Many Keys, Keys, the Heartbreak Monologue. And people can find that pretty easily enough through mikemessier.com. Those are my personal projects that I'm really proud of. As far as bigger projects, I was a script consultant on a film called Lennox Lewis, The Untold Story. That's also been titled Lennox Lewis, The Undisputed. And that's basically a documentary about Lennox Lewis, the boxer from, he was a great boxer. He's one of my favorite boxers. So I was able to contribute to my friend Tommy DiNucci and the people that he was hired by to do some script consulting. Also working with Tommy DiNucci and Two Cousins Productions, I contributed as a lead screenwriter to a horror film titled The Manor, also known as Anders Manor. For that one, we had Kevin Nash, the former WWF champion known as Diesel, the New World Order Kevin Nash, that Kevin Nash. We had Sully Erna from the band Godsmack. Sully and I actually play brothers in that movie, along with another pro wrestler, Mike Bennett. And we had Christina Robinson from the Dexter TV show was our lead actress. So that movie, I'm actually the lead writer on. Lionsgate distributed it. And that's a movie that I think, like a Gremlin, is best experienced after midnight. And as far as other, experiences, buddy, I'm in the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA. I got that card as Taft Hartley, which basically means I had a principal role in a film titled Hard Luck. I had a fight scene with Wesley Snipes, the wonderful actress Sybil Shepherd from Moonlighting and Taxi Driver, and her own sitcom Sybil. She plays my mother in that movie. She actually picked me to play her son in the movie. Mario Van Peebles directed it. His father, Melvin Van Peebles, is in the film, Louise Guzman. That's titled Hard Luck from 2006. A few years later, I went down to do some extra work in a movie, and I ended up in a scene with Meryl Streep and Elizabeth Shue. And that movie is titled Hope Springs, that has Steve Carell and Tommy Lee Jones. But it was pretty amazing to have a scene with Elizabeth Shue and Meryl Streep. And in more recent years, I did a movie that's available, I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, Mr. Birthday, where I played Hank, and I was part of the birthday team. Eric Roberts is in that movie, Jason London from Dazed and Confused. For the folks that have Tubi, I'm in a movie as an actor titled The Mick and the Trick, where I played a henchman called Delante. I have a nice shootout scene with Peter Green. Peter Green was the Gimp in Pulp Fiction. So I think I'm just giving you the whole laundry list, except I had one little scene with Frances McDormand and Richard Jenkins in Olive Kitteridge, That was a non-speaking scene, but I had some good action in that one too.
You've won, I think you said 84 awards in the entertainment industry. What are some of the more notable awards you've won?
I'd say for fighter play basketball, the best award was really inspiring to me. It was the first place Spotlight on New England Screenplay Award from the Rhode Island International Film Festival. I think the year was 2017 on that. And that felt really good because the story of fighter, and that was as a screenplay. So the fighter play basketball story takes place in Providence, Rhode Island. There's mention of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I tried to give a pretty fair description of this gritty working class state of Rhode Island, which also, as a contrast, has this pristine college called Providence College right in the middle of the kind of gritty city. So I think it kind of meant something to me that that got the award from that festival for Fighter Play Basketball, the screenplay, the same novel that we're here talking about, the same story. Some of the others, some of the festivals that have been really good to me, I would first say people in Canada have been really nice to me. The Alternative Film Festival has, I think they've given me 10 or 12 awards over the years and several nominations. That's a festival that does have a live screening, but I think most people probably see their stuff, through the website. But Alternative Film Festival has been very good to me. There's another one called the Couch Film Festival. Another group has been really good to me. The San Angelo Revolution Film Festival gave another screenplay of mine, also ran the Best Screenwriter Award 2 years ago. Also ran as a prison drama screenplay that I wrote. And San Angelo Revolution Film Festival also has a sister festival called the Austin Revolution Film Festival, which I have not won an award from, but they have premiered a few of my works, which is very nice. So, there's also Fort Myers Beach Film Festival has been really good to me, and Fort Myers Film Festival here in Florida. So, my friend Skip Shea and his festival, the Shauna Shea Memorial Film Festival, awarded my Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary, the best documentary one year. And they also gave my friend and actress, Naria Zakarian, the best supporting actress a few years ago for her role in my short film, The Impeccable. The Impeccable is another one of my good narrative works that people can see on YouTube and Vimeo. So if people want to see the full list, Aaron, all they have to do is go to mikemessier.com. And at the top, there's a subheading or a page, they call it, on the WordPress website that says awards. And I have all my awards and nominations listed, and there's hyperlinks to the actual project. So if people want to do the research, they're welcome to do it.
One final question. Are there differences between how you approach writing a book and how you approach writing a screenplay? And if so, what are some of them?
That's another great question, Aaron. And I would say, the approach is really, I think with the novel version, you can really flesh out some things. Here's the trick with screenwriting. The trick with screenwriting is you're only supposed to write in the script what an audience can see on the screen. So if you're writing a screenplay, you're only supposed to write what the audience can see on screen. Unless you're doing something like a voiceover or a narration, you're not supposed to write what the character is thinking or what their motivations are in a screenplay, because unless we don't have a magical way of, you're supposed to just write images, you know what I mean? Like if there's a balloon in the screen and the character laments the balloon longingly, you can write that, but you're not supposed to write the inner dialogue unless that's a voiceover. I'm getting into some real specifics here. But with a novel, you can kind of do whatever you want. I mean, the fun thing with the novel is if you want to go inside the mind of your character, if you want to translate the character's inner dialogue for 5 or 10 pages, as long as it's compelling writing, you can do whatever you want with a novel. And I think with the Fighter Play Basketball story, Aaron, what was really fun was with these characters that I already had, down on the screenplay, I was able to really get in there and with writing the novel after writing the screenplay, after I wrote the novel, I went back and tweaked the screenplay because I discovered that there was more stuff in these characters that I was putting into the novel version. And once I had that, I could go back to the screenplay and buffer up the screenplay a little bit. So, in a sense, these two, styles or these two tasks of writing a novel and a screenplay, they can work together. They don't have to be competitive, especially for someone who's the writer of both adaptations.
Mike, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were an amazing guest.
Hey, man, you're doing a great show here. I listened to some of your other episodes, and I would encourage people to check out the whole diary of episodes you have because you've had a lot of great writers and you ask wonderful questions. So I appreciate what you're doing for the writing community, and I hope everyone here that's listening can check out Fight or Play Basketball, MikeMessier.com, and have a great week.
It was fascinating to interview Mike about his work in a variety of creative fields. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding you all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright 2025, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.